Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Life, Liberty, and Truth. Jared is actually joining us here on Zoom today. Say what's up, Jared.
Yeah, funny story. I got the COVID. My entire family did as well. So
Yeah.
just laying low.
So we decided that we've been off for a couple weeks. It's been a long time. And after everything that happened yesterday, we're like, okay, we need to figure something out. And this is what we're doing. So hopefully the audio all works out and everything's going good. We've done it once before. So hopefully everything turns out good. Um, but I think, as everybody should know by now, the reason that we thought it was so important to go today was because of the riots that occurred yesterday. A sad day in American history. January 6th, 2021, I feel like is going to be in the history books for a very long time. Um, but before we kind of start and get into everything that we want to talk about, let's first just start off by what we know 100% happened. Um, Jared, do you want to start on kind of what happened, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I can go ahead and start. It doesn't really matter to me. But I
Okay.
mean, it's if you haven't been on the news, then I suggest you watch some clips so that you know also kind of have some other information and knowledge. But I believe most people kind of know what happened.
It's kind of hard to
Um,
not see what happened yesterday.
right. Yeah. So basically, we had yesterday. Um, basically, you had um, Congress or um, everyone they were certifying the electoral votes, right? And Mike Pence, Vice President, he was certifying those as well, making sure that they were correct, and he was also passing them as proper electoral votes, right? And so yesterday it was already planned that there was gonna be a bunch of uh, Trump protesters outside, anyways, right? But obviously, clearly, that got out of hand, and basically, you had Trump supporters basically storm the Capitol Hill building, which is kind of a wild thought. You would have never really thought that was going to happen, but it ended up happening. Um, but yeah, that's basically what happened yesterday.
Yeah.
Is they were surveying the votes, and Trump protesters or Trump supporters who were protesting the electoral votes, um, basically stormed the building.
So let me go into a little bit more detail. That was a good overview. So, basically what happens is this time that the vice president and all of Congress get together and they certify the electoral college votes and they confirm them all to make sure that everything was legitimate. And they basically say, this is who's going to be president today or yesterday. Yesterday was the day that they said, this is who's going to be president. So in the Constitution, what has always been done and what's said in the Constitution is that the vice president, because he's in charge of the Senate, he's head of the Senate, he's president of the Senate. Um, he goes and he opens the letters or all of the votes, and then that's how it goes. Well, Trump's legal team was trying to find a way in which basically Pence could find a way to illegitimize some of the votes in the states that fraud was occurred heavily, because everybody knows that Trump is really pushing for the voter fraud. He doesn't want these votes to go through. So what his and his legal team basically interpreted is that in the Constitution, it outlines the duty of the president. And on one side, you have people that say that the job of the vice president to open up the votes is strictly ceremonial. But Trump's legal team on the other side was saying, no, 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 no. What it actually means is that the vice president can say if they're legitimate or not. So that is what everyone in Trump's legal team was waiting for Pence to do, is they were wanting him to say this is illegitimate because these states didn't do this. I'm not going to open these votes from whatever states that they thought had significant voter fraud. So that is what has been leading up to yesterday. Everybody was saying, "Oh yeah, he's not going to accept these votes." Well, long story short, Pence ends up coming out with a statement and he accepts all the votes. He goes and he says that it's not within his duty to decide which votes get counted. It's only his job to open it up. I have in an article from the Daily Wire that says Pence reportedly furious with Trump. GOP senator says Vice President never as angry as he was today. Um, if you want to see Pence's full reason on why he denied them, he posted on Twitter a full 2 pages of why he specifically did not do as Trump wanted him to do. If you want to go read that, go ahead. It's right on his Instagram or on his Twitter. It might be on his Instagram too. I know it was on Twitter. I didn't want to go read 2 pages, but this is a short little clip of what he said in this article. Pence says, "It is my considered judgment that my oath to support and defend the Constitution constrains me from claiming unilateral authority to determine which electoral votes should be counted and which should not." So basically, in Pence's view, he didn't feel like he could do this. It wasn't in his position. Uh, Fast forward a little bit. Within a couple moments, basically the protesters outside find out that Pence did this, and they get livid, right, Jared?
Yeah,
And
pretty upset at that.
pretty upset. Um, Trump had made a tweeted and wanted people to be out in front of the Capitol building on Capitol Hill to go and basically peacefully assemble and have people there to support him and support what happened. So when Pence came out with this, uh, it just all hell broke loose. Um,
Right.
Here's another clip of kind of what Pence was thinking in another Daily Wire article. The electoral certification of Joe Biden moves forward. Pence unable to stop it. Um, After an election with significant allegations of voting irregularities and numerous instances of officials set aside state election law, I share the concerns of millions of Americans about the integrity of this election, Pence said in a statement. The American people choose the American president and have every right under the law to demand free and fair elections and a full investigation of electoral misconduct. As presiding officer, I do my duty to ensure that these concerns receive a fair and open hearing in the Congress of the United States. Objections will be heard, evidence will be presented, and the elected representatives of America will make their decision. Our founders created the Electoral College in 1787 and its first convened in 1789, Pence continued. With the advent of the political parties, the Electoral College was amended in 1804 to provide electors vote separately for president and vice president. Following contentious election in 1876 with widespread allegations of fraud and um, I don't know what that is, malfeasance. I can't pronounce that. Congress spent a decade establishing rules and procedures to govern the counting of electoral votes and the resolution of any obligations. During the 130 years since the Electoral Count Act was passed, Congress has, without exception, used these formal procedures to count the electoral votes every 4 years. Now, it's that last part that I just wrote during the 130 years since the electoral count was passed, Congress has, without exception, used the formal procedures to count electoral votes every year. So, in Pence's view, he found that his duty was strictly ceremonial. He had no power to do what Trump was asking him. That's what's important here. That's why you hear everyone calling Trump a traitor, or not Trump, Pence a traitor. It's because he did not feel like it was within his power to be able to decide which votes got counted and which didn't. Jared, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, and I respect Pence for that. I believe that you should follow the law and do what is constitutional. But at the same time, I think if you believe that there is evidence and that there is legitimate voter fraud happening, I think you should be able to deny those at the same time as well. I'm not saying that what Trump and some of his other supporters are saying about Pence is right, but I also kind of understand what they're saying is like there was definitely voter fraud happening, and I can see why they would be upset at Pence for not denying those electoral votes, right, and just basically passing them along is correct. That's kind of like I don't want to say a stab in the back, but you know, you're on the same team as Trump, and then now you basically give Joe Biden, you literally give Joe Biden the electoral the election win.
Yeah, and I
Like I don't
I
know, it just
I do
seems
understand.
very there's a lot to kind of take in
I
with
do
that.
understand why people are frustrated, but the main grounds that he did this off of was the 12th Amendment to the Constitution. Jared, I don't know if you've read this yet, but let me read it to you guys real quick. The 12th Amendment says the electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for president and vice president, one of whom at least shall not be inhabitant of the same state with themselves. They shall name in their ballots and person voted uh, as president, and in distinct ballots, the person voted for as vice president. Okay, that's pretty self explanatory. That's what was happening.
Right.
This is where it gets more controversial as we go on. And they shall make distinct lists of all persons voted for as president and of all persons voted for as vice president. Yeah, we know that. And for the numbers of votes for each, which list they shall sign and certify the transmit sealed seat of the government to the United States. Now, this is where it gets important, is right here. It says, directed to the president of the Senate, the president of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate, so confusing, and House of Representatives open all the certificates and all the votes shall then be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes for president shall be the president. That's where it gets confusing. Is that word shall? So, um, the obviously the president of the Senate is the vice president. For people who didn't know that, uh, the president of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and the House of Representatives, open all the certificates of the vote shall then be counted. So, what Trump's legal team, like I said earlier, it was that word shall. What Trump's legal team was basically arguing was that that word shall means that he doesn't have to, or that he doesn't need to confirm them. Well, what
Right.
Pence understood it as is no, this is just you have to do it, and it's strictly ceremonial. Basically, the only job is for the vice president, the president of the Senate, to open up the votes and just let him go. And that's where things got messy, was because I actually tend to agree based on this passage with Pence, and I think he did the right thing. Jared, you might disagree a little bit, but based
No,
on strict, what's that?
I do agree with what Pence said. Like I agree with him following the obviously the law and the Constitution and his role as the vice president. I think um, that should be well stated that he did his duty. And while you may not like it, that's what he did.
I agree,
I'm also kind of just talking from Trump's point of view, and a lot of Trump supporters is like, well, Pence technically he did have the opportunity to deny those when he didn't,
but
right? And
they're
so I
yeah,
kind of see that side as well.
I agree. I see why people are frustrated, but I believe that no one should take the law into their own hands, either side. And so I think it's important that he did that, and I thought it took a lot of courage to be able to do that. But let's move on. You guys can kind of decide for yourself what you think. Let's move on from there. Next thing that happened, we'll get into the riots a little bit. So obviously, when people found out, it went crazy. They basically overwhelmed the police. They overwhelmed security, everything that they had there, and just took over. They had to evacuate all the senators, all the representatives. Um, People broke through the windows. If you haven't seen the videos, there's all kinds of videos out there. Uh, Something that important happened was one woman got shot and was murdered, or not murdered. She was killed.
Yeah,
She was killed by
yeah,
the
she was
police
killed.
because she was actually shot by the Capitol Police, and it her shots became fatal. Two other were also fatally wounded that died later. I don't remember when, but I know there's three total that died so far. So that's kind of messy. That's
Yeah,
very messy.
they
That's
literally made it to the House floor. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like the House floor, like doors.
yeah. There was people in
And
Pelosi's office, then the speaker's chair, and we'll kind of talk more about these people that were going through uh, in a little bit. But I kind of want to focus on just the riots and what we absolutely know happened for sure. Jared, do you have anything else you want to add to that part?
no, yeah, we can move on
Okay,
to the next point.
so this is where things get very interesting. So, the woman was shot, and what they end up finding yesterday is, if you didn't know, is that they ended up finding IEDs found on Capitol Hill, the RNC, and the DNC. So, for people who might not know what an
Basically
IED
bombs.
is, it's an improvised explosive device. Homemade
Yeah.
bombs were found. They found one in the RNC, one in DNC, and then I don't know if there was a third or if there was just those two, but they were on Capitol Hill. That is terrorism. There was literally bombs. And a little less known, a lot of people heard that. Uh, Daily Wire, another article, alarming threat to fly plane in Capitol under investigation. There was a threat by multiple aircraft. Uh, it says right here, a threat heard by multiple air traffic controllers in New York to fly a plane into the U.S. Capitol on Wednesday to, quote, avenge, unquote, the death of Iranian terrorist Soleimani and being investigated, CBS News reported Wednesday. So,
Yeah.
uh, there's those two things. They also found trucks full of guns and ammunition within the premises. They don't know if all of these three things are connected yet. I haven't heard anything that suggests that they are, or if they're separate, if it's just random people doing random things. But kind of a big deal. The Soleimani thing is also kind of scary for those of you who do not remember who Soleimani is. He was the one, the was Iranian.
Yeah.
He was an
Yeah.
Iranian
He
general
was
who was,
basically the number one terrorist in the world at
yeah,
point.
he was a terrorist. He was an Iranian general, huge in the Iranian terror cells, and Trump killed him. What was it, the beginning of last year? About a year ago.
It was literally around this time.
It was kind of
It was like
around.
January
It
3rd,
was around when all this
something
the
like that.
Third World War allegations. People were freaking out. Oh, we're gonna start a new world war. This was kind of what started that. So that's kind of important because, for one, if you hear a terrorist trying to avenge another terrorist, it's actually kind of a scary thing. So those three things happened, which is terrifying. We know this has happened. This isn't speculation. This isn't conspiracy theory. These Everything that we said right now is what's happened. This is our news. This is fact, right, Jared?
Yeah, yeah. These are official reports
These are yeah,
that
news
that people
articles
have
of
gathered.
what happened.
Yeah,
So with that said, um, where things start to get interesting and where we get into a little bit more speculation is these kind of rioters. There's been some stuff coming out that a lot of these Trump, you know, so and so Trump supporters are actually Antifa people. Jared, do you want to start with that, or should I go into it?
I mean I can definitely talk about it.
Go for it.
So yeah, there's a lot of Trump supporters, a lot of other just people are kind of saying that it wasn't just Trump supporters that was, storming the Capitol. It was literally Antifa posing as Trump supporters, which, dude, in all honesty, it's definitely wild to say those kinds of things and state those kinds of allegations. But I can definitely see that happening too. I definitely see that as believable. And there's also been, articles that literally facial recognition software has legit identified at least two people
Mm-hmm.
as known Antifa members.
Yeah. So real
So
quick,
it's not really a myth that there isn't Antifa in the crowd. It's just a matter of, were they actually inciting that violence and how many members were there?
yeah, real
That's
quick,
the big question.
since you brought that up, I actually I don't have the article itself. I have a screenshot of the article right here. The article from the Washington Times titled "Facial Recognition Firm Claims Antifa Infiltrated Trump Protesters Who Stormed Capitol." Now, I tried Googling that article before we started, and what I ended up finding out was that the first thing that come up besides that article is a separate article that says that the tech company that created it wants the Washington Times to take down that article. The next article after that is the actual article. And when I tried to pull up the actual article, it took me to some NBA stuff, and I dug around a little bit and I could not find that article. So I'm assuming that it's likely that that article got deleted, but that was the title. Basically, um, through facial recognition, a company that does it, they're able to find that several of the people that were within in these riots were known Antifa people. On top of that, there are pictures of some guys that were riding and that were kind of in the head of all the big instigators. There were three guys. One of them was wearing. Jared, do you remember what he was wearing? He was like some kind of
He
like
was wearing a horned helmet.
a
It was
horned
a horned
helmet and
helmet.
like deer fur, deer skin. It was really
If
weird.
y'all were watching the news,
It was
you definitely saw
you
him.
definitely
He
saw
was
him. You
definitely
look
on
yeah.
camera.
He was not only on camera, he has several pictures taken of him. He was with two other guys. And what I found interesting was number one, if you look at his hand, he has a hammer and sickle tattooed onto his hand. Uh,
Yeah,
if you don't know what a hammer and sickle is, that is the logo that is on the Russian flag. It is a mark of communism. It's the main mark of communism.
yeah,
So that was interesting. Another thing that I found was interesting was when you watch the videos, a surprisingly there's a lot of people that these Trump supporters that are wearing masks, which is very odd because
yeah,
Trump's rallies are famous for not wearing masks. So that was kind of an odd thing to be able to catch. You like, okay, well that doesn't really add up.
yeah.
It could
There's
have
a
been a
lot of like
coincidence.
masks, helmets, like
Hmm.
hoodies and stuff like that. It was just,
It was
you
just
know,
odd, and we
yeah,
can't. We're not saying that. Oh, it was all Antifa. Antifa staged the whole thing to destroy the Capitol and to frame it. And that's not what we're saying. But some of these coincidences are kind of odd. Stuff that we talked about, and we're not saying that Antifa is completely innocent. All it takes is one person to go and break a window, and it starts a mob, right? Well,
yeah,
personally, my guess is that there were a couple Antifa people, maybe a lot, I don't know, that kind of started causing trouble that encourage other people who probably would have just stayed behind and not started anything, who were very emotional, who have been locked in their house for so long, and they're these patriots, and that they see people start rioting and they're like, okay, I'm going in too. That's
yeah.
my guess.
I would just want to set the record straight. Like for me personally, I don't know where you stand, but like, I I do not support the violence that happened on January 6th yesterday. I don't support that at all. I think it's wrong. I think it's un-American, to be quite frank. But I do I do see where a lot of these people, these Trump supporters, these patriots, because they are patriots, they love America,
Hmm.
and I believe that the motivation behind them storming the Capitol was because of their love for America. I know it sounds like really weird, like why would they storm it? No, they're trying to make a statement, and the statement is that they believe that there is corrupt officials. There are corrupt politicians inside voting and deciding who is going to be president. When there is, definite, substantial evidence of voter fraud happening. That
I
happened.
I 100% agree. Um, Morally speaking, I personally believe that you do not repay evil with evil. I also believe in being the bigger man. And when you do such things as riot, break into things, shoot people, bring your guns around irresponsibly, which is another thing that I found was odd, was that there was a lot of people just running around with ARs. And I was like, okay, that's not a responsible gun owner because Trump supporters pride themselves on being responsible gun owners. But morally, when you do the exact same thing that your enemy is doing or that the person you're against, left or right, not I'm not saying that they're our enemy, but that they're I'm using a war term. But when you're doing the same thing that your enemy does, that makes you no better than your enemy, right? And so I
Yeah,
believe in being the bigger man and not repaying evil with evil. You got to be better than what you're going against. And this yesterday was not at all better. Not even a little bit. It was horrific. And so that's where I stand. I do understand where you're coming from. I do understand the anger and the emotion that was with it, but you have to be better. It's inexcusable. And I think that just like the BLM riots, these people need to be prosecuted to the fullest extent. They need to go to jail and they need to be punished because that's not what
Yep.
you do.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that at the same time law has to be basically brought in. Like that's just the thing is when you break a law like that or you're doing, I mean you're literally breaking into a federal state building. Like
Yeah, what do
come
you
on,
what do you expect is
there's
going to
gonna
happen?
be
You're going to get shot.
there's gonna be charges. You're gonna get shot. Like you should expect those kinds of things to happen. And I saw clips of basically Trump supporters like almost kind of battling with the police. Like,
Yeah,
man, I
which is another
understand
odd thing.
you're, yeah, like you're the same person that was saying back to blue. We support the police, but now you're kind of like battling and fighting with the police.
If
It doesn't make any sense.
if these people were not Antifa like we're guessing or like we're theorizing that it's possible and they were all 100% Trump supporters, then shame on them because you're a hypocrite for one because all of the back the blue stuff, all of the don't defund the police, support the police out the window. Not to mention if you personally, I know it's different, but if you supported this riot and you said that what was done on Capitol Hill was morally just and was okay, but you condemned the BLM riots, then I think you're a hypocrite. Because
Yeah,
I do understand that it's slightly different scenarios, right? This is for the future of democracy for our country. This was voter fraud, things that shouldn't have happened, compared to BLM, which was, in my view, it was,
flat out just violence.
yeah, the victim was at fault, and then the police officer did the right thing. But if you look at it from both point of views, from the the pro BLM person, if you look at it from their point of view, they're doing it for the exact same reason that those Trump protesters were doing it. They're doing it because they believe that there was a moral wrong that occurred and that they are actually righting it. And they're doing good by rioting and looting. So if you go and if you condemn those BLM people for doing what they believe is right, and you go and you say and you praise the Capitol Hill riots for being morally right, then you're a hypocrite. I think they're both wrong. And Jared, you
Mhm.
could push back on that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said. Yeah, you're definitely a hypocrite if it's definitely different scenarios, but I feel like it's the same kind of motivation behind it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, yeah, I think it's kind of, um, ironic that that kind of happened yesterday. And one of the things too that kind of sucks is this wasn't like all the Trump supporters and everyone that was fighting the
No, not at
police. It
all.
wasn't. It was a few. It was a select few. Literally less than 1% of the official crowd.
If it
It
was a
wasn't everyone
BLM riot,
fighting.
if it was a BLM riot, it would have been mostly peaceful.
Yeah, and that's the thing is the way that the news covered it was they 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 showed just the clips, and I understand that, but they showed just the clips of the violent parts, the windows being broken, the fire extinguishers being basically shot off and everything. It's just kind of like I don't know. It seemed seemed like they were trying to encapsulate a Trump supporters as being all violent, and when in fact most of the Trump supporters that were there that day were just standing around, just
Yeah,
talking,
most of
having a
them
good
were
time, and protest for
peaceful
obviously in
assembly,
support
like
of Donald Trump.
peaceful assembly of our rights. Yep. So something that I've noticed with these protests that I find ironic is how quickly that all of these Democratic anti-police, because that's what they are. You want to defund the police, you're anti-police. These anti-police uh, representatives and senators, whoever they are, I thought it was very ironic how fast they wanted to get the Capitol Police in. Jared, did you notice that too?
I thought it was very entertaining that the very same people that were basically all for defunding the police are now like, oh shoot, we need the Capitol Police here to protect us. It's like, well,
And who were the first
all
people
right,
that got them out of the Capitol building? The police.
they're the Capitol Police.
Literally, like, are you kidding me? So you want to defund the police, but then you want the police to be there when you need them. Pick one. Oh, so frustrating. And then how fast Nancy Pelosi was like, bring in the National Guard. Oh my gosh, really? So you've been so against Trump bringing in the National Guard for these riots that lasted months, literally months, as in more than 1 month. How long did Oregon last? It was in the hundreds of days, wasn't it? It was
Yeah,
over
and
a
yeah,
hundred.
that's a
But
that's a big story there.
within a couple of hours, you're already saying bring in the National Guard, but you wouldn't let them do it after several months. You didn't want Trump to call in the National Guard when these rioters and these BLM and these Antifa people literally broke off a part of Seattle and claimed that they were their own country. You wouldn't call in the National Guard then, but you would call in the National Guard after a couple of hours of conservatives that are literally there because of your decisions and what you've done to destroy the country. I find it incredibly ironic and
Yeah,
frustrating.
it's definitely very funny. It's definitely ironic that yeah, like you said, these people that are calling for defunding the police now all of a sudden want the police to come save them. Like, and same thing with the National Guard. I was incredibly upset with the DC mayor. Like, obviously, he wasn't calling the National Guard for months at all when literally DC was freaking on fire,
Mm-hmm.
right? But now he decides to call in the National Guard because these pro-Trump supporters are storming the building. He's like, "Oh, we need to call in the National Guard." Same thing with Nancy Pelosi.
And
It's just it's very upsetting and kind of like frustrating. Like these are the very same people that are they're hypocrites, man.
that's
That's all.
exactly
That's
what
all
I
I
was
gotta
going to
say.
say. It's so basically what you're telling me is you want things to go your way and you don't want to uphold the law and you don't want to do all these things when it's for you, but as soon as it's against you, you're all for it. That's a hypocrite. It is her doing that and her deciding that that was a good idea shows you the exact reason why people were rioting in the first place. As much as I don't agree with the riots, it's her decisions and her stuff, her doing those exact things. That is why they stormed the Capitol in the first place. And so it's it is infuriating. It's incredibly infuriating and makes you very angry. Do you have any?
Yeah, it definitely makes you kind of understand and see the point of view of the people that literally actually stormed the building. Uh, and I can again, not that I agree with what what they were doing, but I definitely see from their point of view, like, man, these people are hypocrites. They're literally turning on America. They're not for the people, and I think that's what's most frustrating. The most is that not to kind of get repetitive here, but if you're trying to defund the police, but now all of a sudden you're calling on the police to come save you and protect you from the bad Trump supporters that are about to get you, like it's just I find it very funny, and it's just if you're gonna play that game, you might as well just stick to your side because I'd rather be on one side than in the middle because I ain't trying to be a hypocrite. I'm gonna just stand by what I say and then not backtrack and lie.
Mm-hmm.
It's deception, full on deception.
It's funny and it's ironic until you realize that these are the very people that are running the country, and you're just
Yeah,
like, who on earth decided that it was a good idea for you to have any kind of power whatsoever, even in a business? Who would have made you a manager? Like who's that dumb? And then they go and they elect you into the Speaker of the House? Like what the heck? Oh, it's so frustrating.
they're the third most powerful person in the country.
Yeah.
You
And
know.
a bunch of idiots elected you. And I can say that because I live in the state that elected her.
Yeah,
Don't live in the city, thank God. Ugh, worst city in the country. Changed my mind. Okay.
yeah, it's definitely a mess. But yeah, I think it's time to move forward from that.
I think that wraps up the Capitol riots. Would you agree?
Yeah,
So, some news that you might have missed that is actually significantly more important than the rioting itself. Um, some very sad news in Georgia. The elections for the Senate both went Democrat, which is huge because that puts a Democratic majority in the Senate. It's 49-51, isn't it?
I can't remember the exact number, but it definitely leans toward the Democratic side.
I know they have a majority 100%. Another thing that happened was that on, was it Tuesday night that they were happening? And I don't, mm, okay, this is frustrating, but so you know the graph that everyone talked about when Trump and with Trump and Biden in it was in Georgia and everyone's making that graph t-shirt and they have the line that goes straight up for Biden. Remember that?
Yeah, that was like, yeah, I don't think it was Georgia. It was like
It was
Wisconsin
Wisconsin, I think. Yeah. Well,
or Michigan. Yeah,
If you look in Georgia for the Senate races, that happened again.
yeah, I saw that too.
It is incredibly infuriating. Now, I want to know who thought it was a good idea to run a special election the exact same way that you ran the primary election to begin with. They didn't change anything. They left all of the same voting machines in. Basically, everyone just voted twice, and there's still fraud.
Yeah, there was still fraud. It was just like it's a mess. And here's the thing: is you kind of get to a certain point where you're like, if you can't even trust the elections, can you actually trust the politicians that are in charge, the leaders of your country?
If you can't trust the way
Because
that
they're
they
not
got
doing
in,
anything.
they got
Yeah,
in
they're not doing
fake.
anything.
That shows that if you're willing to cheat to get into office, it shows that your morality is skewed and is out the kind of people that you want in office.
Yeah, no, you don't want cheaters, and you want honest people in office that are for the people. That's the big problem, and that's kind of why so many people like President Trump was because he was for the people. He wanted to help the people. He didn't care what all these politicians and all these policies what they had to say. It was he wanted to help the people and benefit them the most out of anyone, and he got a lot of flack for it.
Hmm.
And
And
it's just
that's why it's
when you
been so
can't,
hard, is because he
right?
was not a career politician. He's not in bed with all these politicians. He's not, he's not with Epstein like all these guys are, like the Clintons. He was not a
Yeah,
politician who ran and he won. He was a wild card. That's why they hate him, like Trump or
yeah,
not.
and that's again just the big issues. If you, how can you, when you lose the integrity of elections, how can you possibly trust anyone else? Like, how can you trust anything that's going on behind the scenes that you may not even know about,
Yeah,
right?
if people are cheating on an election race, even a small one in Georgia for a House seat or a Senate seat. Senate's more important. Senate's more prestigious, so it's harder to get in. So they're a little more important. But say a House seat, like if I can't trust you to run a fair election just for one House seat, how can I trust you to go and run the country? Or how can I trust you to know that what we're doing overseas is actually like morally right? I can't. If you're gonna cheat on such a little thing like that, then I guarantee you cheat on little things or on the big things too. And the important issues, the
Yeah,
actually important issues. It is insane. Um, anything else to add?
nah, you keep going.
Well, I think that wraps up every point that I have. Did you have any more?
Okay. Let me think real quick. Um, so here's the thing. Basically today, so January 7th, um, it's been officially uh, basically claimed that
Oh, I
Joe
forgot about
Biden
this
is
part.
going to
Yep.
be president.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be inaugurated on January 20th. He's going to be the new president of the United States, right? And it's definitely not what I wanted. I can tell you that.
I know it's
And
not what I wanted.
what a lot of other Americans, they definitely did not want this either. But I think we have to remember our place, um, in America, but also as people and as Christians, we have to remember that at the end of the day, we're here for God and to serve God. So it doesn't matter who our president is, we serve God, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether he supports him or not. And yeah, I think we just need to know where we stand, spiritually and be strong in that.
Excellent point.
But I also think uh, why a lot of people are having a huge problem with this is that uh, questions are not being answered,
Mm-hmm.
and
And
that's the
yeah,
big problem.
there's no
Is
transparency
if you're
either.
not, yeah, if you're not going to answer the simple questions of American citizens of why this is happening, it's definitely very odd seeing how Joe Biden had the least amount of counties ever, right, in an election, but he also got the most votes, right? He broke the record for the most votes, but got the least amount of counties.
Yeah, Trump
Doesn't
broke.
really make a
Yeah,
whole
Trump.
lot of
I
sense,
remember
right?
that Trump broke a record for the most amount of counties that voted for anyone. It wasn't even just Republican, ever, and he
Yeah.
still lost.
And so there's a lot of questions that I definitely can see that are not going to be answered now. And people are just going to move on from that. The big thing is remember just the social media censorship. Yeah, that plays a big part in our lives of okay, now the media is going to censor certain things.
Oh, we didn't really talk about
And
that, did we?
yeah, we didn't really cover that, but that's okay. We
It's
can
not
talk
nothing.
about that another time.
Yeah,
But that's just one of those things. If when because Twitter and Facebook they basically suspended Trump's account. If you didn't know that,
yep. I have an
they
article on it
basically
too.
removed his account indefinitely on Facebook. And so when you kind of see that happening, when these social media platforms are censoring literally the president of the United States and deleting tweets, it's you lose a lot of validation for these social media platforms and basically just the integrity of everyone else that
Yeah,
runs these platforms. So there's just a lot of things that are going on, but I'm hoping that we move forward from this and we just do what we need to do.
yeah.
Even though in California we're about to get a 62% tax increase, but that's okay.
It's okay.
I
Yeah,
guess we'll just, we're
move.
gonna be dirt anyway one day. So yeah, that's kind of what I gotta say. There is let's just continue on with our mission with Christ and live as Christians, do what we need to do, serve God.
I think that's a great point, a great spot to end on. I, I'm gonna say something real quick. I 100% agree. Um, this is a this is the time that you need to get your focus right. This is the time that you need to be prepared. The America that you knew is no more. And for those who needed to hear that or that have been ignorant to the fact, you don't have this scale of cheating and this scale of scandal that goes unnoticed or covered up without major consequences in the future. And that's what's going to happen. The fact the um, that the Democrats both hold both houses of Congress and the presidency means that you're going to have laws and amendments like no other. You're going to have insane amount of laws that are not going to be in our favor as working class citizens, as people who value the Constitution, who value freedom, who value God. I mean, look at what Democratic governors and states have done right now. I'm still not allowed to legally. Well, I shouldn't say legally. The governor does not allow me in California to go and meet in church right now. Now, the Constitution, thank God, does. And guess what? The Constitution overrides anything a governor says. But people are getting fined. They're going to jail for going to church. And so, if you think things are going to get better, I think it's time for a reality check. And I think it's time for you to get right where it matters and to start questioning what is happening, why it's happening, because everything that's happening is happening for a reason. And I think it's important not to forget that. So
Yep.
as we end right there, thank everyone. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for tuning in. It's been a tough 24 hours up to this point, and yesterday morning. Uh, things are definitely changing. Hopefully, they are for the better, but don't get your hopes up. That's my advice.
Yep. Just do what you need to do. That's all I gotta say.
Yep.
Get right with God right now.
So that's the best advice anyone can ever give anyone. Get right with God right now. Thank you guys for listening. We appreciate it. Um, if you have any suggestions on new topics, anything you want us to talk about, hit us up on social media, Twitter, Instagram. We're getting a lot of followers now, so that's nice. Hopefully, we get some more listens. We get
Yeah.
some more people sharing around. We get more people enjoying what's happening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Like we said, Instagram, Life Liberty Truth podcast, um, Twitter, either one, whichever. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you later.